Welcome to Up Close, Meet the Poet Behind the Verse. Tonight we'll be showcasing Janna KNITTLE. I am your host, River Maria Erke, and here with me to help me pull this off is Julie Martin.
Hello.
Here at Up Close, our goal is to introduce the person behind the poems with an interview, a poetry reading, and a giveaway. I have a special announcement tonight, and that Up Close has joined with Cracked Walnut, and will be at one of their programs. And when we come back for our summer program, and in August, we will be on Thursday nights actually. So kind of a little different. We remind our Zoom audience to remain muted during the duration of the show, and give a shout out to our sponsors, Cracked Walnut and the League of Minnesota Poets, and remind us all we're being recorded for a future video on YouTube. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our spring Up Close poet, Janna KNITTLE. Do you have
Hello, River. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, thank you, dear. I'm glad you could come. So did you want to try to get our other little video going, sweetie? Julie?
Yep, I'll work on it.
Okay. Janna is an English professor at the university.
Not a professor. I'm a lecturer. I'm way down.
Oh, I totally thought you were. Oh, well, at the University of Minnesota, and lives in South Minneapolis. First off, we need to give her a huge congratulations for her book, Real Work, becoming a finalist for the Minnesota Book Awards this year. The winners were announced last night. She might not have won, but it's just a huge accomplishment to be one of the 4 finalists. A little bit of her background.
Ready for me to play it?
Yep, you totally can. Janna was raised in Corvallis, Oregon, the heart of the valley, around 95 miles south of Portland, on a farm with her 2 sisters. And actually, I believe it's a hazelnut farm, right? Hannah is in the middle child, and between her sisters. In junior high, she found a passion for theater that continued into her high school years. Janna also found a love for cross-country skiing. She graduated from high school in 1985. Let's see, she graduated from high school. She went off to college, received her bachelor's by 89 at the University of Oregon, Eugene. She kept going to school, so she got her PhD, I believe, in 95. She moved to Kansas for a master's program in 99, and then moved to Minnesota in 2004. She's taught English, creative writing in Oregon, Kansas, and now in Minnesota. 2018, she published the Fish and Wildlife chapbook from Finishing Press. And then in 2022, her book Real Work was published by Nolan Press. She's a contributor of 2 anthologies, and she has poems in many online journals. And like I said before, her book Real Work, her first full-length poetry book. It's a finalist in the 2023 Minnesota Books Award. So with that, let us welcome Janna KNITTLE.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. This was exciting.
Totally. Thank you for joining us. First, your book, Real Work. Can you share with us, all of us, most of us are writers here, so can you share with us your experience with the Minnesota Book Awards? Like, the nomination, to becoming a finalist, to your feelings
Yeah.
waiting to hear the winning book?
Yes. Well, the nominations are sort of the easy part. You actually can nominate yourself if you have a book that's come out that year that you're eligible, and all you have to do is send in I don't know, something like 10 copies of your book and $75. But fortunately, my publisher, Noted Press, took responsibility for that and nominated me. So I knew I was nominated, and the finalists in each category were announced. I believe it was on February 28th, and I actually did not expect to be a finalist, and that is not false modesty. I assure you, I was staying off of the internet that day because I didn't want to be sad. And Norton Stillman, beloved publisher at Noden Press, phoned me personally to say congratulations that I was a finalist, and I was very surprised. So then there's a 2-month period between the finalists being announced and the actual awards being conferred, and it's such a crazy time because I felt like, gosh, if this were a race, I could be trying desperately hard to run a faster 10K, but because this is a book competition and the judges just have my book and it's already written, all I can do is just keep promoting it as best I can and keep my fingers crossed. But being a finalist is really exciting. There was a written interview that everyone was asked to do, and those were posted on the blog of the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library, who are the ones who run the whole book awards process. There was a video recorded panel of all the finalists in each category, and we got to read from our work and answer a few questions from a host who was a previous winner or finalist. And then last night was the big event, with like a little version of the Oscars for me, as far as I was concerned. It was very exciting to be there.
Did you have a little speech ready?
I sort of had one in my head just in case, but I did not expect to win. I actually, was already pretty convinced that John Lee Clark was going to be the winner for his book, How to Communicate. So I was still wishing, but maybe not hopeful last night. But it was nice to be there and to meet him and get a hug from him.
Well, can you give us the gist of what real work is about?
Yeah, I started writing some of the poems in the book during my work on my master's thesis, and part of what was going on was I had all these memories that were coming up, just unbidden. Like I could be brushing my teeth and I would have a memory of my dad taking me to visit the lab where he worked, and seeing all the fish tanks and everything. Or I'd have a memory of a camping trip, with my family. So I didn't expect to be writing about my family or the little farm that I grew up on. I had kind of, tried to run away from them, but they were also rich with imagery, these memories. So I started writing poems, and I definitely have memories of being a kid and being told to grab a bucket and pick up some hazelnuts, and there was always something to do. And then there were a lot of poems about grief because I was watching both my parents age and decline, and I also lost my older sister pretty unexpectedly in 2012, and she was only 46, and that's just, you know, something that takes a really long time to process. So I wasn't really sure how these poems were going to add up to something. And there's a lot of natural imagery because I'm a big nature buff. And what happened was I was reading Alice Oswald's book Dart, which is a book-length poem about the River Dart in England. And I came to these sentences. This is what keeps you and me alive. This is the real work of the river. And I loved the phrase real work because, you know, I kind of grew up having the importance of work being hammered into me by my parents with their Protestant work ethic. And I was doing this, you know, real work, this real emotional work of grieving. And then there's the fact that, you know, that quotation is about rivers, and, you know, rivers figure fairly prominently in some of the poems, the ones with a lot of natural imagery in them.
Could we hear like one or two of them?
Sure. Do you anything
two?
any particular type of poem you want to hear, or just one that I have picked out?
Just, yeah, one that you have picked out.
Okay. Well, this is one I picked out prior, and this was one of those memories that just popped up out of nowhere from when I was a kid, and my older sister wanted more than anything to raise a dairy goat. So we went on a visit to a farm to do some research, I guess. This poem is called My Father's Hands. Visiting the dairy goat farm, I stepped out the farmhouse door and fell down the hole in the front porch the owner forgot to mention. I landed on a dirt pile, made sure my eyes were open because blackness bewildered me. I remember flash of hurt from tailbone up my spine, how afraid I was of bats. I sat on that hillock for less than a minute, but for 30 seconds, I believed they'd leave without me. I was a penny down a well, a scrap blown across a lake, until I tipped my head back and saw a rectangle of light, my father's hands. He pulled me out, asked, "Are you all right?" I said yes, even though I didn't know, my teeth still resonating. I still don't know. No matter how many days I lift myself up 2 flights of stairs, return home barely scathed, I still walk out my door each morning, afraid I'll drop and never stop.
Wow. You're right. You go deep. It's really, it's a great poem, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Maybe we'll get another one from that one a little later. So,
okay.
Do you credit your parents for your love of language and the written word? What did they do that made you feel this way?
Well, one thing that should not be underestimated is just the fact that there were bookshelves with books on them. So, you know, books were always available and at hand. This will definitely date me, but this sounds like another like 2 centuries ago, but my parents bought a set of World Book encyclopedias from a traveling salesman, and they lived on the bottom shelf of a particular set of bookshelves because they're big, heavy books. And my mom used to say that I would lie on the floor with one of those open and I'd just be leafing through it, and she'd say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm reading the encyclopedia." My mom read to us kids often at bedtime, kind of part of a bedtime ritual. Sometimes other times, like if we were sick or just being cozy on a cold night. My parents were pretty educated. Their own backgrounds were pretty humble, but they both had graduate degrees, and so they placed a high value on education. And so yeah, just that was just something that was always important. It's not that we didn't have a TV or we never watched TV, but that I saw my parents reading, and they read to us, and they encouraged us to read, and they bought us books.
It's missing in the world today.
Yeah.
I was another house with those encyclopedias you're talking about.
Okay.
We had those too. It's kind of funny. I wonder how many of us. Now, yeah, everything's on the computer. It's such a different world. So, where you grew up in Oregon, it's nicknamed the Heart of the Valley.
Yeah.
Can you explain why that has that name?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. I mean, Corvallis is Latin for Heart of the Valley. And I think it's just that the town might be, certainly not dead center, but sort of in the middle of this large valley called the Willamette Valley, which is a big agricultural area.
Gotcha.
So you can buy some pretty fancy Pinot Noir wine from the Willamette Valley, Oregon, though that was not a big thing when I was growing up. Hazelnuts were a crop. There was wheat, ryegrass grown for seed, mint hops, blueberries, strawberries, a lot of those things grown in the valley. So I think that's how it got its name. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So your focus, creativity, I can't say the word for some reason. Your focus in middle school and high school was theater.
Yeah.
And you averaged about 3 plays a year, you told me. And so I am curious, did you have a favorite one?
Fiddler on the Roof probably brought me the most fame or infamy. When I was I want to say sophomore in high school, I played Yenta the Matchmaker in Fiddler on the Roof, and got a lot of good laughs every night. I can't remember what it was, but there was one line that I actually improvised, and the director actually let me leave it in. I don't remember what it was. It was just some quip that I came up with in rehearsal one time. So Yenta the Matchmaker is an elderly woman. I had a cloak that I wore. I had I wish I still had it. I had a beautiful staff that was a piece of driftwood I had found on the Oregon coast, and I walked with this staff, and I modeled the walk. If I remember this correctly, I modeled the walk off of I think it may have been Yoda in the Star Wars movie.
Oh, really? Cool.
So I had this hunched over walk, and then I did a probably very bad Yiddish accent, but yeah.
Well, what compelled you to act? What was it that drove you to be on stage?
If you were to ask my parents, they would say that I was always a ham. And always playing dress up and things like that. I used to I was a little kid, so I didn't even know that there was a real character named Sherlock Holmes, but I loved the character Sherlock Hemlock on Sesame Street.
Oh, yes.
And he had the deerstalker hat and the pipe, and
Mhm.
he'd have the music dun 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 dun, and I would steal one of my dad's caps and one of his pipes, and I would play Sherlock Hemlock when I was a little kid.
I remember you telling me one thing about with the theater was how getting into the characters, how that made it that was a big part of it, just taking on like how you, and I thought I was thinking of that when you were talking about the one with the cane and hunched
Yeah.
over and just totally just getting into this character.
Yes, I mean, I would definitely describe myself as someone like who's not shy, but who is introverted. I do need my time alone to like recharge, so I can't go to parties and be social every night. It would kill me. And I also have a fair amount of social anxiety, but and I would be nervous and scared before going on stage, but it always just felt like I'm just putting on this suit of clothes and I'm becoming this person, and it's not me out there under the blazing hot lights with everybody staring at me. I am the witch in Macbeth, or Yenta the matchmaker, or Mrs. Antrobus in The Skin of Our Teeth.
Well, I think that kind of goes into our next question, and it's about in high school when you wrote that mock interview for Rolling Stones. Can you tell us the story of that?
This would be embarrassing if it weren't for the fact that I'm actually kind of proud of it and wish I still had it. But I had this, I mean, I didn't really know what life and adulthood were going to bring to me, but I did have this desire to be an artist of some kind and to have some measure of fame, and I guess sort of because I was maybe longing for this kind of attention, I actually by hand wrote out an interview between me and Rolling Stone, and it was about me and my songwriting partner and our relationship and our creative collaboration and what each of us brought to the table. Just treating it like I was a successful singer-songwriter.
I think it's great.
Van Vega or something.
Oh, I think it's great that you did that. It's too bad you don't have it. It's those things that we wrote so long ago. If we could go back in time and say, save this,
Yeah.
But things are long ago. Well, you began college at the University of Oregon in Eugene as a theater major.
Yeah.
At some point, you switched to English. You received your bachelor in '89. And that was the beginning of a long time of college degrees. In '95, you received by '95, you received your PhD to teach English, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. You taught in Oregon for a little while, then you moved to Kansas in '99 for another class, a master's program. I feel like you're totally like a lifelong learner like I am. Can you tell us about this program?
Oh, the one in
You
Kansas?
moved to? Yeah, the one you moved to.
Well, and I'll never know for sure which steps in my life have been missteps, but you know, it was an adventure. I had been teaching postdoc as a lecturer or instructor in English on these 1-year contracts, and you know, not finding anything tenure track. And I thought, you know, maybe switching gears a little bit might be a good idea, for better or for worse. And I had gotten very interested in Native American literature and film, and I had just been reading a lot and thinking a lot, and had even contemplated going into a tribal law program at some point. And University of Kansas has a big tribal law program in their law school. But when I sent for information about that program, I was also sent a brochure for this brand new program called Indigenous Nation Studies. And it was an interdisciplinary master's program with a couple different tracks you could choose from. You know, one mostly humanities, and one had more public planning, policy, law, and leadership kind of classes. And it was called Indigenous Nation Studies because the focus was meant to really be on the Western Hemisphere, not just the United States or even North America. And since I graduated, it's actually become the Center for Indigenous Nation Studies and has a more global focus. So that's interesting to note. I ended up studying a lot of history, and took a couple education classes, and wrote a thesis on teaching Native American literature. And I was hopeful that that was going to lead to, you know, maybe more job opportunities. It ended up, you know, it didn't lead to anything, you know, really long term. The people who benefited the most from that program I was in either went on to get doctoral degrees in Native American studies, or they were people who were who had, you know, tribal enrollment and were going to go back home and work in tribal colleges and in tribal government and things like that. So I was kind of, you know, between the cracks in a way. But because I had done some, you know, interdisciplinary work, I ended up being able to teach some women's studies classes and some American studies classes and a history class as a lecturer at the University of Kansas, and really kind of grow my teaching portfolio, I guess. So it was helpful in that sense. And it also continues to help me when I'm teaching literature classes these days, because I do try to teach Indigenous literatures, you know, when and where I can, if you know, if it's something that can be part of the course.
Totally. Well, and then in 2004, you moved to Minnesota and started to teach at St. Cloud State.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
and now I think we're going to take a moment and do our giveaway. You have 2 books that you're going to give away today. We got one for being real world or work. I did that. The same thing I did before. And I'm so horrible at that. So this is one book, and the other one is your chapbook, Fish and Wildlife. So 2 books. There's 2 numbers then. So everybody out there in the Zoom audience, you get one guess between 1 and 50, and whoever comes the closest without going over wins. If it seems like, I'll leave it up to
Oh, I muted myself. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Somebody froze. I don't know if it was me. It seems
It's
like
to-
everything was frozen.
And River, did you say between 1 and 50, 50?
yeah.
Okay, Hardy, follow the directions.
Oh, what did he think? He went a little higher than that?
Yep.
That
Yes,
was
dear,
me.
whatever you say, dear.
That was me.
That's Petey. I'm gonna put that on Petey.
23.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Hold on. Where's the chat? There. Okay.
23.
Okay. Hmm,
So,
that didn't work. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. And hit enter. Okay.
Sweet.
Now we're muted again.
Again. It's you. Interesting.
Nobody's talking. Nobody's moving.
Did you? Okay, there's Charlie.
Where's the sound thing?
I'm
Whatever.
here. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Charlie.
Oh, River got knocked. There we are. Okay.
Okay.
you can't hear me talking when I was on and mute. Okay, so are we back?
I think so.
Yeah. George, put
I'm
in your
here.
guess. Oh, George is gone now.
That might be him.
Nope, that's Rick Hilber.
Oh. Let's see here. Gotta get the speaker back up. Okay. So,
Now everybody's guess has disappeared. So
oh no.
yeah, the chat
I-
disappeared. Type
I
them
can
back in again.
see. I can see Charlie, Pam, and Hardy's guesses.
Okay, tell me Charlie's. Read them to me.
Charlie guessed 41, Pam guessed 48, and Hardy guessed 23.
So it sounds like
Yeah.
we got one winner.
I'm sorry, say the last one again. 43.
23.
23, Hardy. Okay. So Pam wins.
Yep, but we still got was
Okay, so
was
let's
that everybody that guessed?
yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Should we do another guess between 1 and 20 for that? Don't go over
yes.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
Type in hi Rick.
Which book did Pam win?
She won real work.
Yay! It's
So
yours.
is everybody doing another guess now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Between 1 and 20.
Where's the chat?
6.
Okay, I'm looking for the chat now. I can't find it. Where's the damn chat? There it is. Okay. It's not cooperating. Okay. I heard them, right? 6. Okay.
Okay. So let's get
Yeah.
do you have a favorite poem for us to read to us?
From which book?
Oh, from the Fish and Wildlife.
Fish and Wildlife? I do. This one is all poems either about animals or from the perspective of animals. I was kind of experimenting a little bit with animal consciousness. And this one came from a lot of lore I had read about corvids, crows and ravens, and how they will follow hunters, whether human or canine. I'd been doing quite a bit of reading about corvids at the time. This is called Avant-Garde. My feathers purple against a rising sun, twisted by wind. I swing round, look down on you in your reindeer parka crusted with snow. I thought you were another animal, breaking trail through drifts between white pines. When I kick, you tip back your head. They look naked, human faces, open to cold. From a mile above, I see hunger stalk your mouth and eyes. You take little notice, move so slowly. I rest upon a branch ahead, watch until each grizzled hair on your back lumbers into view and passes before I take the air again. I have one art to bridge the space between my clouds and your boots. Watch me, man, take aim. See where I circle, circle again. When I tumble from the sky, wait until I tuck and tip one wing. Around the next granite boulder, antlers rise. Aim will share the steaming heart. I made one error in my reading. I kind of misplaced a line. Apologize for that.
Oh, that's okay. That's a great poem again now. So
Thank you.
totally. We got 2 more questions. We can I have enough time for you to do your little reading after. So if you're not at work or writing poetry, what do you like to do?
I like to be outside in all weather. I love to cross country ski. I just love to be out in the woods on a trail on skis where it's quiet as much as possible. That's my favorite thing. But in the warmer months, I will be hiking, jogging, trail running, biking, just enjoying the outdoors. Since I've been teaching at the University of Minnesota this academic year, and it's kept me really busy. So I have not gotten
Is everyone froze?
No.
Okay. Are you back, dear?
I'm here.
Okay. Is it? Did I freeze? You froze completely.
Yeah, I think you might. I thought you froze. So, oh well.
Okay. So
I
yes,
hope
I was
someone's
gonna.
doing
What I
some
was gonna
skillful
say to
editing.
I was gonna say is that you and Julie need to talk. You two. She loves cross country skiing just as much as you do.
Yep.
Okay,
And being
great.
out hiking. Yep.
Yep. That's
I'm surprised we haven't run into each other.
Yeah.
Maybe we have, but we only have this much of our faces.
that could be very
I look
possible.
like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last question I have is, nature has been an important part of your life from growing up in Oregon on the farm to your cross-country trips during your Eugene days to your hikes today. It touches your poetry in what way?
I get a lot of inspiration from the outdoors, and I mean, in all honesty, I mean, if I'm outside, being physical in the outdoors, that's when I get a lot of thinking done, and so I do get ideas for poems. And sometimes it comes from just an image. I'm working on a poem right now where, I was out by one of the lakes in Minneapolis in winter, and, it was iced over and there was just this mist over it, and just kind of coming up with all these metaphors to describe what this phenomenon looked like kind of started me writing a poem. And other times it'll be a line that comes to me, something that just sounds good, something that has a little bit of rhythm to it. So so it's often my inspiration. You know, currently I'm dealing with a lot of despair about the natural environment, and trying to find a way to write about it that is not preachy, but that could make some cogent points about you know, what's happening to the environment. And I think that, you know, one of the concerns I have is that you know, people growing up today do say they have an awareness of the dangers facing us because of global heating. I like that term. The Guardian newspaper uses global heating and climate catastrophe. They do not use the term climate change. But I also think that people who are younger, you know, they maybe see, you know, 5 songbirds a year and they think that's normal, you know, whereas it used to be so many more. You know, I just don't think that it's possible to have a clear picture of how much we've lost. And even now, I've only lived in Minnesota since 2004, and every year I hear people complaining about how long and how cold the winter was, and I'm shaking my head and saying, no, that was not anything like a winter that I experienced in, you know, 2004 or 2005. They are definitely getting shorter, and you know, there's more snow, but that's because they're a lot warmer, and so you get more precipitation. And then did anybody notice that we had, you know, rain every few weeks? You know, so we had a lot of snow, but then we had rain, and I was like, you know, I'm going crazy. Like, why is it raining in December? This should not be happening. And you know, it's frustrating. You know, I would love to write poems that are calls to action, but it's hard because, you know, anytime I try to write something that you know, in that vein, I think it's in danger of sounding, you know, preachy or strident, and something like people don't want to read or listen to. So I struggle with that quite a bit.
It's hard. Some people are just really good at ranting. They are.
Well,
they
I just did a pretty good rant, but you know, I
Yeah,
don't think
you
it
did
was
do
a very
a
good
good
poem.
But when they with poetry, I mean, some people are just really good at it, and then yeah, some people are better storytellers in different other ways. Well, I'd say, let me see what time it is. I think we have time for you to hear some more poetry.
Okay. I picked out let's see. I think I'll read one more from Real Work, and then a couple newer poems, one that just came out and one that's coming out sometime. So I wrote a series of poems about my sister who passed away at 46, and this came out of when I was visiting her home to collect some of her belongings. My sister's clothes. I collect what I can pack or ship while her widower watches. Among vintage and ornate pieces, I suspect mordant damage, but the dresses still wearing tags hurt me most. As I lay wool coats across a chair, her cats climb them, pawing them. Folds of velvet, silk, and gabardine suffer from memory. All clothes do. That's why closets so often house ghosts. I have no room in my own closet. I take a black wool coat, 3 dresses, brocade jacket, silk blouses to give her ghost a home.
Wow. Wow.
And then speaking of poetry that may or may not be political, I guess I can say that I actually wrote a somewhat political poem that ended up getting published recently. And what worked for me was writing a persona poem. And so I'll read it to you with the subtitle, and then I'll give you the background to it after I read the poem. So this just came out in the journal Pleiades this year. They had a special folio titled Silences of War. Soliloquy, based on statements attributed to Mikhail Kalashnikov, designer of the AK-47. I was born to design machines to feed my homeland before home became the Eastern Front. I bestowed a blessing. Nazis were dragons. They slavered across steppes, devoured each crust and crumb, blackened fields families had worked for centuries. I still dream of threshers leveling rows and rows of stalks, grain tall as soldiers. Or I see myself drawing plans to fuel the masses via efficient elimination of cattle, sheep, chickens, geese. Now the gun is my only legacy. It is out of my hands. And then the background for this was something I had heard on a public radio show where Chris Wolf said, Kalashnikov, quote, has said that you can blame the Nazis for him coming up with a good gun design. He would have preferred to make agricultural machinery. And he said, I always wanted to work on a good lawnmower. So that's where that came from. And then
Well,
I have, yeah.
That's a powerful little poem there.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess, and then back to environmental issues. This poem is coming out sometime this year in Conduit magazine, which actually I didn't realize until after I submitted that it's based in St. Paul. I had just seen them on a list of journals to submit work to. So this one got accepted. It's not been published in there yet. It is called Necessary Prayers. Cool August night, you could almost believe in a world without end. Go ahead, believe it for a moment, long enough to gain a full night's rest, to imagine falling into love again, to plan a visit to Glacier National Park. Just don't hang on fantasies too long. Glaciers shrink. Gardens where Danaeus plexippus once alit are bare of wings and blooms. Don't you miss them as you vroom by burning carbon? Or do you imagine monarchs were always few, far between? Pray for milkweed. Pray for blue skies. Pray for sugar water. Save a prayer for butterflies.
Oh, that was, wow. Well, I think we better check in with Julie and see who won the second book.
Well, we have a problem because
Is nobody still guessed?
Rick went over the number, and Hardy and Charlie guessed the same number. So I guess by default, then I win.
Yeah, you know what? I say you do. I think that, yes. So you put your address in the chat to Anna, and Pam, you have to put your address, or do you know each other close enough that you can, yeah.
I don't recall where I know Pam from.
Well, there's her address.
Okay.
I'm just a League of Minnesota Poets writer, and I'm
Oh, okay.
I teach at RCTC in Rochester, but I don't think we've ever met. I've done a million conferences in the Midwest and a bunch of writing workshops in Northwoods, and I've done poetry slams
great.
in the cities, but it's just, but you're at the U of M and I'm in Minn State, so we probably never crossed paths.
Wow. Halling Place, Hall. Oh, I should write this down correctly.
Well, thanks for the book. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, you should get it in a few days, and hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
Well, and we write down, I think that, is there anybody have like one question out there we can throw at Donna?
I've got one. Carving out time to write, especially when you're teaching and grading and worrying about 500 other things, and you have to give the best part of your day to other people.
Oh, yeah, it's super hard. And what I had to do, I mean, I used to wait for inspiration. And then when I did write, you know, I usually had a fairly decent, you know, core idea, but, you know, it was pretty sparse. You know, a lot of time in between writing. And so I adopted a habit about a year and a half ago of just writing every night. It's kind of like free writing. You know, I was at a reading where I said that I write a poem. I've been writing a poem every day for a year and a half, and the whole audience went, and I grabbed the microphone and said, I have to tell you, my standards for a rough draft are extraordinarily low. And they really are. I mean, it's just, and I think I finally learned that, you know, that just if it's a little bit, even if it doesn't seem like it's a good idea, it's still important, because it's kind of like skimming that scum off of the soup stock when it's cooking down, you know, like that comes to the top and you get rid of it, and then more comes to the top and you get rid of it, and then eventually you have a really nice rich broth, and those are the lines that you write that end up actually being worked into a poem. So I try once a week to actually type stuff up that I think is the least bit promising. And it definitely goes longer than that sometimes. Sometimes it'll be a couple of weeks before I can do any typing and revising. But just that practice of having my little notebook and trying to free write, you know, even half a page, it's been kind of freeing too, because I sort of get out of my own way. I like I said, my standards for this type of writing are extraordinarily low. So sometimes it's just, you know, how tired I am, you know, and not terribly inspired. But yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Donna. This has been great to have.
Oh, thank you, River. I'm really delighted to be here, and I've been looking forward to it. And I've heard about your series and looked at some episodes, and it's really great that you like to talk to poets and let them talk about themselves as well as read their poems.
Well, yes, we get to. I think it's really to show. I don't know. I'm really happy that we've learned so much about each other. But so next up close is actually not till August. It'll be like, I think it's August 2nd. It's in the summer. And yeah, so I'm gonna just disappear for a minute. You guys can keep talking. I gotta go turn off the recorder.
Rick, I thought you should do a plug for the upcoming Bird's Nest. So we can invite Pam Whitfield. The rest of us know about the lovely guest speaker for the next Bird's Nest. Oops, you're muted, Rick. You're still muted. You're still. Rick, you're muted. Oops. Pam, I don't know the date. Somehow Rick isn't able to unmute himself, but Janna is going to be the feature for Bird's Nest Poetry, which is another venue that Rick Hilber hosts. It's he features a poet once a month, and then there is an open mic. And he advertises this on Facebook. And so you may want to look for this. And Janna, maybe you know the date because you're the feature.
Yeah.
What is the date?
It's the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. So what is that? The 28th
So
at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay, great.
So Pam, check
and
out Bird's Nest Poetry to hear
Thank
more
you.
of Janna.
Is that live or is that virtual?
It's live. I mean, it's live on Facebook.
Oh, okay. It's a Facebook Live event. Okay. Because, I jump back and
Or
forth.
she'll